Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patty Hubbard, and I'm the Outdoor Recreation Grant Planner at Missouri State Parks. And this is the 2024 Grant Application Workshop for the Environmental Review section of the application. Hopefully, everyone was able to download the application and the open project selection process, which are the directions to the application. I also refer to this as the OPSP. If you've not had a chance to download it, I recommend that you use the link in the Notepod to go to the website and download those very quickly. I will be referencing several pages within the OPSP, especially in Appendix B, which is the grant application guide. I will give you page numbers plus the Adobe page numbers if you are following along digitally. This presentation will be covering the following section only, which is the Environmental Resource Survey, which is questions 76 through 85. Make sure that you focus your questions on just this section. If you have questions about other sections, feel free to either email me or call me at a later date in order to look at those. So let's talk about the application a little bit. This application does look very similar to the application of last year, but there have been some minor changes. So you want to make sure that you are filling out the 2024 LWCF application. Make sure that you work on this section of the application early, because some of the processes in here will take up to 30 days to get reply back from other agencies. A complete application will need to be mailed to us or postmarked by November 15th of this year. Courtesies can be emailed to us by October 11th. Before we dive into the application itself, we're going to talk about why the LWCF grant is required to do an environmental review, and all projects are required to complete an environmental review. Enacted in 1970, the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA for short, is a federal law that requires federal agencies to assess the environmental effects of their proposed actions prior to making the decision to undertake that action. For the Land and Water Conservation Fund, federal NEPA approval is required because these are federal funds coming from the Department of the Interior, the National Park Service. NEPA is often considered an umbrella law because it encompasses requirements that are included in a variety of other federal environmental laws. The purpose of the environmental resource survey section of this application is for you to provide documentation on the impact of your project will have on the environment. This is a list of different types of resources that are evaluated during the NEPA process. As you can see, we're going to be looking at the historical and archaeological and cultural resources. We'll look at threatened and endangered species. You'll look at jurisdictional waters, which include large lakes, rivers, streams, wetlands. It even includes disappearing streams. We'll look at water quality. You'll look at floodplains, air quality, hazardous waste sites, prime and unique farmland and soil, low income or minority populations, the noise levels, recreational or user access, travel patterns, assurances of public and tribal involvement, and some others. A qualified specialist should be used in determining the impact of these resources that your project will have on these resources. I do want to note that the tribal consultation will be completed by the National Park Service, so you as an entity do not need to reach out to the tribes. If your project is recommended for funding, the National Park Service will work on that portion of the environmental review. Most LWCF projects are category exclusions, meaning they are excluded from further review. The answers you provide in the application will help us make our recommendation to the National Park Service, and then the National Park Service will make the final determination based on what you provide in this application and their list of approved category exclusions or their approved list of actions based off of prior experiences with similar actions that do not have significant impacts on the environment. So that is why you guys as an entity, you are starting this environmental review process. Based off of your answers, I will make a recommendation to the National Park Service that hopefully it should be a category exclusion. The National Park Service will then take it from there and they will make the final determination. So if we don't provide them enough information going forward, they may say that it can't qualify as a category exclusion, and you may have to do either an EA, which is an environmental assessment, or an environmental impact statement. So looking at the application, we're going to start with section 1, which is questions 1 through 8. This asks you to provide general information about your entity who's applying for the grant. The first 2 lines ask for your entity name and, of course, your mailing address. Next, we do want your UEI, which is the 12-character alphanumeric ID that you have received from sam.gov. If you do not have a UEI, you do need to register at sam.gov to receive one. This process can take up to a month, so start that process now. Question 3 asks about the application preparer. This is the person who's writing the application for your organization. It does not have to be someone within your organization. You can be using a regional planning commission if you choose. If we have questions about the application and after the courtesy review, we will be in contact with this person. Number 4 is the contact person for the project if the project would be awarded. This is the person who would be responsible for overseeing the project and responsible for the expenditures and the reimbursements once an award is received. This is also the person who will attend the mandatory grant administrative workshop if you should receive an award. Question 5 through 8 just asks you to give us your U.S. representative and your state representative and senator because we do send out letters if you do receive an award. Question 9 through 11 asks you provide information about your organization's background and prior performance with the Department of Natural Resources. This is the first section and is scored and is worth 10 points. Pursuant to 2 CFR 200, we are required to conduct a risk assessment of all applicants to ensure that we are being good stewards of taxpayer dollars and that we are only awarding grants to entities that have the capacity to manage the project. The answers given in this section provide some information about your organization. If you are selected to move into round 2, you will be asked to provide additional information to complete the risk assessment, such as a copy of your most recent audit, accounting policies, and procedures. Make sure to answer these questions based off the organization listed in question 1. So the example is if the City of Missouriville Park and Rec Department is the applicant, this information should only reflect the department and not the city as a whole, or vice versa. In question 11, please notice that we are asking you to provide performance history information for grants received by DNR as a whole and not just the LWCF program. Only talk about grants that you have received from us in the past 10 years. Please be sure to provide adequate information here so that we can verify with the other grant managers if your project would move into the next round, and we do have to do a risk assessment. So the environmental review survey starts on page 36 or Adobe page 59 of the application guide. Questions 76 through 85 comprise the environmental resource section of the grant application. The tables provided in this section serve as a record of the environmental resources present at the site, whether the proposed action is likely to significantly negatively have a negative impact on the resource, and whether further information is needed to determine the potential impact. Review the listed resources and identify any resources that may be significantly impacted by your scope of work. Do not include short-term impacts as negative unless a federal permit is required to satisfy those impacts. The environmental resource survey should be completed with professional input from resource experts and in consultation with relevant local, state, and federal governments as appropriate. Remember that the cost associated with hiring a firm or individual to complete your environmental review can be used as a pre-award cost. Just make sure to add it to the budget table, the narrative, and question 74. Before you start to answer these questions, you need to determine what your area of potential effect, or APE, will be within your park. If this is a 1 to 3 acre park, the APE might be the entire park. If you have a larger park and are only constructing in one area of the park, your APE will be smaller than the entire park. Within the APE, you should include the location of all construction activities, staging areas for the equipment used in the project, and locations where any excess soil will be dumped within the park. On this slide are two examples for an APE. The top right shows that the entire park will be the APE and staging will occur within the park. The left photo is a 15-acre park and only the playground is being constructed with the project, so the APE and staging area are smaller than the entire park. My next example is a large park and construction will be taking place in two separate locations within the park. I have included a staging area for each of the construction sites. When you are creating the environmental review maps, some of the maps get very close up views of the project area of your APE, so you might need to do two different maps to show each APE. Then some of the maps you can zoom out the map to include both APEs on one map. You would then just draw the two APEs on one map. The yellow line represents the areas that I would draw on the environmental map, that this is the area that will be cleared during the environmental review. Remember, a bigger area is better than a smaller area. So as you can see, the area where my construction is happening is within red, where I'm staging is in blue. So when I'm drawing it on the map, I want to draw the what's on the yellow line to connect those two, because they're obviously going to be driving from the staging area into my APE. So my area is much bigger than just those two areas. So once you know what your APE is, then you can go ahead and you can start your environmental review. So question 76, this is table 1. For each resource, indicate if positive impact or negative impacts are anticipated to result from the actions, or if you need further information to determine the potential impact. If this project will have no effect on the resource, mark it as positive. If the resource is not located within the area, such as the water coastal barrier resource or coastal zones, leave it blank. Do not mark it. You will need to write a justification on how you made the determination of positive, negative, or unknown impact for each resources. If you choose unknown impact, explain what other resources are needed in order to make a determination. And even if you're going to say there is no impact, that this project will have no impact and you're marking positive, you have to tell me how you determined that this, such as air quality, is not being affected by your project. So even if you have no impact, you still need to explain how you determine that. On pages 34 through 37 of the application guide, there are several links for the environmental review maps and websites that will help you with each environmental resource. All maps and correspondence with other agencies should be included with your supporting documents. So now we're going to look at each of these individual resources, and I will kind of explain what we're kind of looking for here. So air quality. Most projects are exempt from air quality confinement requirements from the Clean Air Act unless they are in regionally significant areas as defined by 23 CFR 450.104. Regionally significant areas within Missouri include St. Louis and Kansas City. If the project area is within one of these regionally significant areas, you should contact your metropolitan planning organization. There are website links on this slide. Well, I didn't put it on the slide, but they're on page 36 and 59 of the guide. And so you would need to contact them and find out if you need to have a permit or what you need to do. And then you would include all that with your supporting documents. Then there are also air quality standards for open burning. So if you're going to be knocking down trees and vegetation and you plan to burn that before you start your project, you do need to get a permit from the Department of Natural Resources, and you would need to talk about that here. So circulation and transportation, what we're looking for here are you adding parking and accessible routes to the park? Remember that everything that receives federal funding does need to have an accessible route and ADA parking connected to it. So most likely you are going to be adding this, and this will be a positive effect. Or are you adding a trail that's going around your entire park? That is also positive. For your climate, I want you to look at how you answered the question in 71 and see if you listed any positive impacts to the project. If you did, then you mark positive and you tell us what you're doing. Contamination or hazardous materials, even if mitigated. So you are going to be visiting the Department of Natural Resources Missouri eStart website to get a map. I'm going to show you in just a little bit how to get that map, but everyone will need to have this map, and it needs to be printed in color. And lastly, we have endangered species. You will need a copy of your IPAC report and Missouri Heritage Report and all communications with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the Department of Conservation if you need to contact them. And the next slides are going to show you how to pull those reports. But first, we're going to look at the hazardous waste map. So when you get to the Mo eStart website, up at the very top, you're going to type the park address into the search and hit enter. Then you will zoom the map in so that the entire park is located on your screen. If you zoom in too far on the map, a table's automatically going to pop up at the bottom, and that means you've zoomed in too far. So just zoom out once more. Center your park in the middle of your screen. Go to the left-hand side, and you will click the top box there by hazardous substance investigation and cleanup sites. When you check that, all the ones underneath of it will be checked. Then go down to the regulated petroleum and hazardous substance storage tank facilities and check all those. Or check that box, and then it will check everything underneath of it. Give it a few minutes, and you should see the fields will populate, and you will notice, like on this one, there's a red diamond, which means there's an active site outside of my park. Okay. Center your park closer to the legend. You will need to take a screenshot or snippet of the entire map, which would include the entire park, and get the legend. So it will look very similar to how you're seeing it here. Okay. Once you have that snippet, turn it into a PDF, put it into a Word document, and you need to print it off in color. Okay. Then you would want to go in and you would want to draw in your APE for your park, whether that includes the entire park or just the area that you're working in because you're using a larger park. If you have Adobe, you can add in your APE in Adobe and then print it in color. This map must be included in your supporting documents. If, when you pull up your park, if there is a symbol from the legend, either within your project area, within your park, or very close to your project, you would want to click on the symbol and then click on the summary page. Once you get to the summary page, you will scroll to the very bottom of that new screen and you would click on the thing that says click here to download a PDF for this site. Once you have that PDF, you would want to print it and include it with your supporting documents. That will tell us more information about that site itself. Okay, so you would want to do that, like I said, for anything that appears in from that legend within your APE or within your park, or if it's even outside your park, but it's like right across the street, you would want to do that so that we know what's over there. And then include everything in your supporting documentation. Okay, here, now we're going to go through how to get your IPAC report. The link to the website is on page 37 or page 60 of the application guide. You will need to log into the site to get the report. So if you have not been on the site before, you would need to set up an account and then log in, and then you could start a project. Once you're into the website, you will want to follow the steps on the left-hand side. So as you see, one is location. So type the address of the park and zoom the map in so that the area of the park, so that you can see the area of the park where your project will affect. Make sure to include all that staging area. If you have a small park, remember, you might as well just include the entire park. If you are a large park, you can include just your APE. If you have two areas, I would go ahead and draw the polygon around the entire area. So for the IPAC, it's better if you just draw a bigger area and include both APEs, even if you're in two different areas of the park. So when you get down to number 2, you're going to use the polygon to draw the area around your project. Okay. You will click once and start to draw. And then when you double click, it will stop drawing. Once you've done double click, it will pop up this number 3 and it will ask you to confirm it. And you just, if you're happy with the way it was drawn, just hit continue. Once you hit continue, it will go to the next page. And once you get to that next page, go down to the bottom there right next to those pictures and click Define Project. Then you will add the title of your project, which comes from question 54 in the application, and the entire scope of work from 59, plus the location of the park from question 12, and then click Save. On the next screen, just click Start Review. A new screen will appear and click Continue. And then when you get to this step 1, click Yes, request a species list. Then it will ask you if you need to require an official species list, and you will click Yes. Then click Yes because federal funds are being used on this project. Then it will ask, does the project fall under any of these special projects? The answer is none. Then it asks, what kind of organization are you working for directly? You would then select from the drop-down list. So it's either going to be a city, a county, I think there's schools, there's other things. Just pick which one applies to you. Then for the next question, you would want to select, there is another agency that is the lead. Then it will ask, are you the designated non-fellow representative? Your answer is no. It will ask you what your role is, and you are the applicant. Then you will fill in the state and then select your city or county agency. Then it will ask about the lead agency. You're going to select federal agency, and then you will go to the drop down, and actually you can actually just start typing National Park Service and it will automatically pop up, and then you click on it. From there, it will ask you what your contact information is, and you fill that all in with your name, your address, and zip. When you get down to what type of project you are, you have two options you should be selecting from. You're either going to select from a recreation, which is a maintenance, or modification, which means if you're renovating stuff in your park, you'll do that. Or is it new construction? Okay. Now, if you are doing both new construction and maintenance, determine which part of that project gets the most funding. If most of the funding is going to new construction, to new additions, then you will click new construction. If most of it's for remodeling and you're redoing a playground and you're just adding a bathroom, then it's going to be a modification. And then after you do that, you'll wait a few minutes and then you'll click on Submit Official Species List. It will pop you to this next screen, which takes you back to the step 1, and you will need to wait there until the blue species list pops into that screen. And it will tell you it will take up to 3 to 5 minutes. I have not had it usually take that long. Usually it's about 2 minutes and you have it. But once you have that species list there, you will click on it, open it up the PDF, and you will download it. And this is what it will look like when you download it. Okay, so it's going to be a multiple page document. This is actually 3 different pages I've combined into one, but the top part your top letter looks like this. If you have a watermark that is going through the paperwork that says not for consultation, you have pulled the incorrect report and you need to go back and pull an official list. Okay, this should come with no watermarks through it. Okay, this is your official list. The IPAC report will be several pages, and it will list all the threatened and endangered species within your project area. Plus, it will list if you have any critical habitat within the area. You will use this information to write a letter to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. A template for this letter is on page 19 or Adobe page 42 of the application guide. This letter is written, so the template is written for a project that would be removing trees. If you have tree removal as part of your project, it should be listed in the scope of work And you will also need to make a commitment to not remove the trees except between November and March in order to protect the bats. Tree removal can only occur when the bats are hibernating, and so you will need to make sure that you only remove them then. If you are removing a building, such as a restroom, you will need to make the same commitment, but you also need to make sure that there aren't bats hibernating in your facility. So if you have a restroom that you're going to be demoing, you need to go in and look to see if you have bats hibernating in that restroom during the winter months. If you do, you cannot remove that structure while they are in there hibernating. But then you also have to check to make sure they're not roosting in there um, during the summer months too. So demoing buildings can be a little bit tricky, but you will need to take all this information and submit it to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. If you are not removing trees, you still need to write them, because if you have something like the Virginia sneezeweed, you will need to write them and let them know what your scope of work is, a brief scope of work, what you're going to be constructing, what you're doing, information about how long the park's been a park, and then tell them what species are in it, and they will tell you if they think you're going to be affecting them or not. Besides sending the letter to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, you should include a copy of your LWCF boundary map. You should do a close-up view of your project area, showing them your APE and your staging area. If you are going to remove trees, you should mark those on the map as well. Then you should do a zoomed out on Google. You should zoom out so that you have like about a 1 to 2 mile radius from your park, and you would send them that map and tell them exactly like what latitude and longitude, township, range, and section this park is in. And if you know of any caves within a 1 to 2 mile radius, you should mark where those caves are. Okay. And so all this communication that you send them, so the letter you send them, the letter you get back, you should all include that in with your supporting documents. Communication with them takes about 30 days. Now, for the Missouri Heritage Report, you're going to follow a very similar process. You will need to log into their website. You're going to draw that project area. You're going to fill in the information just like you did for the IPAC report. So telling them that there are federal funds being used and who your federal partner is. And then they will send you a report. Their report's going to start with this as a letter. They do actually have, the Department of Conservation sets 3 different levels. They have a level 1, 2, or 3. Each level tells you exactly who you need to contact and do further coordination with. Okay, so you will have already all contacted the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, so you can contact them. But if you have a level 2 or a level 3, you will also need to contact the Missouri Department of Conservation, and you can take the template letter and you can change it and address it to the Department of Conservation. Tell them your scope of work. Tell them if you're removing trees. Tell them everything that you told U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And they give you the directions in here about who to send it to. And then you would include that letter plus all the information you send them and information you get back from them as part of your supporting documents. So after you get these reports back and you get these letters back from them, that is where you could go into the question and write, we, pulled the IPAC report. It showed we did have endangered species. We contacted U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and this was their determination. And we have included it in our supporting documents. The same thing with Department of Conservation. We contacted them. They sent us a letter back saying we will have no effect or we will affect. Just whatever their communication is, that's what you want to put down. So when we're talking about environmental justice, this is the minority and low income populations. You should evaluate your town to see if there are any environmental justice impacts from your project. So use the links to the U.S. Census, either My Community Explorer or the Quick Fact ones, and you would want to compare your city to, say, the county and the state. So you would want to look to see, does your town or city have a higher than average low income population or minority population? Is this project sitting in an area that will be a positive impact to them because it will increase their recreational output? That census information should be included with your um, supporting documents. Now, if you've attended the other workshops, you notice that this environmental justice information, the census information, is used about 3 or 4 different times for 4 or 5 different questions. We only need the information once. You don't have to supply it for each question. If you supply it once, that is what we're looking for, because we want to know that you use the same information each time to answer each of the questions. So the geological resources, what you're looking for here, did you change the slope of the land by doing your project? Did you have to put in a retaining wall in order to bring your project up to level so that it meets ADA requirements? And when you did that, did you help the runoff situation or did you make it worse? Are you developing a rain garden to help control the runoff from your project? Maybe you're creating a parking lot and the rain garden is going to help. That's where the water is going to collect and you're going to have this beautiful garden there. So that's what you're looking for on there. And then if you're buying any stream beds too, um, you know, are you affecting those by your project? The next one is the historical and cultural resources. As part of your environmental review process, you will need to initiate a Section 106 review with the State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO for short. The Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act requires federal agencies to consider the effect on historic properties present in the project they carry out, approve, or fund. The State Historic Preservation Office is the agency authorized for ensuring Section 106 compliance. To initiate a Section 106 review, submit a Section 106 review and compliance information form to SHPO. Directions for completing and submitting the form are found on their website. You will also be required to submit topographic maps of the site. You will need to submit the scope of work of your project from question 59. This should include the project area size and all the depths that you will be digging in the soil. And you will need to submit photos of any existing structures. So if you're renovating a playground, you will be taking pictures of the playground from different angles. They tell you exactly what the pictures are that they need. So those pictures can also be the photos that you use for describing what the current area is. Upon receipt of this information, once you email, because now you can email this to SHPO. The SHPO has 30 days by law to review it and send you comments. Once you have your scope of work nailed down, you should start this process. This will take 30 days to receive a response back from SHPO after they receive your packet via email. So let me stress that if the SHPO determination letter is not in the application packet, the application cannot be scored. This is a major component of the environmental resource. So submit your SHPO packet early. Do not wait until the end of October to submit it, or it may be too late. SHPO letters are good for 3 years. So if your scope of work has not changed. If you've changed anything from the submitted to SHPO, such as adding accessible routes or accessible parking, you will need to update the information with SHPO and they will have 30 days to respond. If the information you provide is significant to make a determination, the SHPO will send you a letter with that determination. Include a copy of the SHPO letter along with your Section 106 review packet that you sent to SHPO with your supporting documentation. If the information you submitted is not significant to make a determination, SHPO will send you a letter requesting additional information or may require that a professional archaeologist or archaeological historian conduct a cultural or archaeological survey. Coordinate with SHPO on the requirements of the survey and conducting a Section 106 survey memo form. Once the survey has been completed and reviewed by SHPO, indicate the determination results from the survey and attach the concurrence letter from SHPO and a copy of the survey. If your project has an adverse effect determination, further consultation between SHPO, your organization, our staff, with Missouri State Parks and the National Park Service is required, and we will conduct this consultation if you guys make it into round 2. Another important thing to remember with SHPO is if after you've submitted it to them, if you remember, oh my gosh, we didn't add accessible routes, you need to go back and revise your application with them. Okay. Because it's very important that, and that's why we want to see your packet that you sent to SHPO, because we want to see that the scope of work you have in your project is the scope of work that SHPO reviewed. So not only the letter, but the packet that you sent them needs to be sent with your application. So the next one we have is invasive species. Do you have invasive species within your park? Will this project be addressing how these will be removed? You can check out the Missouri Department of Agriculture's website for more information on noxious weeds. So if you have them in your park, are you planning on removing them as part of the project? Are they in your project area and need to be removed? Just remember, you can't plant those types of plants within your park either, because they are considered invasive species. So how are you addressing those? Next is land use. Does your city or county have a land use plan for the park? And does that project fit within those land use plans? If you are on leased land, do you have a 25-year lease left with the organization that owns the land? For lightscapes, especially night sky, is your project impacting any dark sky areas? Do you have dark sky areas even in your town? You may not. So you may not be affecting them, but look at the fact, are you replacing lights within your park to be more energy efficient, or ones that will have timers so they're not running at all hours of the night and only only until dusk? Are you installing lights that are going to help with security and safety at the park? Do you have lights that when it gets to a certain time at night, they go dimmer so that they don't affect the wildlife anymore? Those can be positive effects. Migratory birds. Do you have migratory birds in your park? Are you removing trees where these birds nest? Check out the U.S. Fish and Wildlife website link that is located on page 38 or Adobe page 61 of the guide to check to see where there are migratory birds in Missouri or even in your town. Recreation resources. Are you adding new outdoor recreation opportunities to the park or your city? And just so everyone knows, your entire scope of work for your project should be a positive impact on recreation. Okay, that's why you're doing this. You're doing this project to increase recreation in your town. So this should automatically be a positive effect, and you just need to explain why it is. Social economics. What are the economic impacts of this project? Will this project increase economic activity within your town? So if you've told me in another part of the application that this is the only inclusive playground within a 30 miles, are there people coming from 30 miles around to come to your park? So now are they eating lunch? Are they shopping in your town? Is that going to increase? Or if you're creating ball fields and you're planning to host tournaments in these ball fields, is that going to increase the economics within your town? For sound, will there be a significant change in the noise because your project has been created? When we're talking about significant changes, I'm talking about, like, are you adding a shooting range in your park? Did you add motorized trails to your park? That can increase the sound. Um, Putting in ball fields and having cheering and stuff going on is probably not going to significantly increase the sound within the park or within the area, but a shooting range will. And how, if you're putting a shooting range there, are you um, trying to diminish that sound that's going out? Or are you putting a sound stage in your park that you're going to allow, um, bands to play at? How are you diminishing that sound so it's not disturbing the neighborhood? That's what you want to think about there. For unique ecosystems, most of you guys are going to be leaving this blank unless you have a biosphere, a World Heritage Site, or an old growth forest within your project area. If you don't have one of those three, leave this blank. For water quality and quantity, so identify if you will be impacting the water quality or quantity within your town. So, are you creating a splash pad that's going to recirculate the water, or are you doing a one-time use one? Maybe you're renovating a sports field to help reduce the standing water on the field. So, are you changing that slope within that ball field to help with the drainage? Are you putting in a drainage system underneath your playground to help the water get off the playground quicker so it can be um, used um, more often? Next is the coastal barrier resources and coastal zone. Everyone will be leaving that one blank. 19 is marina. You're going to leave this blank unless you happen to have one of these two things within your scope of work. If you have the marina in your scope of work, we need to know if your project is eligible for the Dingell Johnson or Wallop Borax Act funding. So you need to investigate that and see if your project could be funded with those. If not, tell us that and tell us how you and show us the research that you did to determine that. Number 20 is water stream characteristics. You want to check out the EPA stormwater discharge for construction activities website to learn about permits that you might be required to have. Links to this website can be found on page 39 or Adobe page 62 of the application guide. Are you going to be disturbing more than 1 acre of land? Or is this a phase project and will all the phases when combined disturb more than 1 acre? So if you're phase one of a project of 3, you're not just looking at phase one. If all 3 phases combined is going to disturb more than 1 acre, you are going to be required to get a disturbance permit from the Department of Natural Resources. And their website is right there on the screen. It's also in the manual. So you will need to talk about those permits and where you're at. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more when we get to that question. So for water, wetland, and floodplain, both of these require maps. And I'm going to show you how to pull them here in the next slide. Remember, you've already actually had to use the floodplain map when you're answering, I believe it's question 17 of the previous application. And then the soil survey and prime farmland, I'm also going to show you how to pull both of those maps as well here. So we're going to start with the wetland mapper once you get to the website, which the link is located on page 39 or Adobe page 62. You're going to scroll down to the bottom and click on the wetland mapper. In the top right-hand corner, you're going to find a blue button that says Find Location. You're going to type the address of the park into the map. The map will pull up a zoomed in on the map on your park, but you still want to make sure that you can kind of see the surrounding areas around you. Wait a few minutes before you do anything, because you will need to make sure that the blue lines and the blue squares that you see will populate, but it takes it just a minute. Center your park into the middle of the screen. Once you have it centered, go up to the top and click on Print. Type the name of the project, which came from question 54, and then click Print again. You will be waiting several minutes, and then your print job should appear. Once your print job appears, click on the blue Print Jobs. The PDF should open up on another screen. When it opens up, click the download button at the top right of the page. And I'm going to tell you this, when you are printing these maps, most of them are going to open up in another screen, and it's going to look very similar to this. There's going to be this download button at the top, so you'll want to hit this download button. Once you hit the download button, save the map to your computer. The map is going to look very similar to this. This is what you should see. So you were either going to print this map off in color and draw your project area on the map, or you can use Adobe to draw the map before you print it. If there are any wetlands from what you see down there in the legend within your project area, you will need to contact the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to see if you're going to need a 404 permit. You can use that U.S. Fish and Wildlife template that I have on page 19 or Adobe page 42 of the guide and change it to address it to the Army Corps of Engineers. Tell them what the scope of your project is, and tell them if you're going to, be affecting the ravine or the stream that is in your park. If you have a ravine or a stream that is located right outside of your project area, you would still need to contact them because you want to assure them that the runoff from your project is not going to go into the stream. And then you would include this map plus all the correspondence with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers with your supporting documents. Now we're going to look at the floodplain. Remember, I'm sorry, this is question 18. So you need this on question 18 as well. The link to the website can be located on page 39 and 62 of the guide. Type in the address of the park when it comes up and press search. Give it a few minutes and the park should appear on the map. Use the minus sign to zoom in on the project. Use the plus and the minus to zoom in and out depending on which way you need to go. If the pin ends up not being in the correct location, so you would want to put that pin in the center of your project area. Just click on the pin once, it will disappear. Put your mouse where the middle of your project is and click it again, and that pin will reappear in the middle of your park. Once you have it, center that pin into the center of your screen, then go back to the top and hit a dynamic map and click on that. Okay. And then it will open up another screen. You will click that download button and save the PDF to your computer. Now, right currently, the floodplain map is having some issues with their website. So, as you will notice, there's a lovely yellow box up at the top when you get onto the website. If that box is still there, okay, you would need go ahead and type your address in. But when you hit search, it's going to come and it's going to be so far zoomed out that you're not even going to know. It's going to show you like the counties all around you. Okay. What you want to do is right above that map, there is a button. It says go to what is it? NFLW or NFHL viewer. You would click on that button. It's going to take you to a whole nother website. Follow the directions on the screen and you will be able to get the map. Okay. I don't know how long they're going to be having issues. I know they're currently working on it. 3 days ago, there wasn't this problem, but now there is. So if you see the yellow box, follow the second set of directions. If not, you've got the other set. And then this is what your map will look like. Okay. You will want to print it in color and hand draw in your project area. And if you haven't figured it out, all your drawings on your map should all look the same because you're doing the same area. You're viewing the same area for each one of these maps. Of course, then you can also use Adobe to draw it on there. If you have a floodplain within your project area or just outside, you should contact the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to see if you will need a permit. Remember, all correspondence between you and a federal agency should be included with your supporting documents. So once again, you're going to want to see if you're going to need a 404 permit. Okay, now we're going to look at the soil and the farmland maps. These two maps are actually pulled from the same website using the same information. You just have to go back and click on different tabs. So the first one we're going to pull is we're going to actually get your project area done. If you have 2 or more separate project areas within the park, this will be one of the maps that you will need to print for each project area because it zooms in very close on your project area. Okay. The link to the website is on page 39 and Adobe page 62 of the guide. If it doesn't open the tab immediately to the area of interest tab, you should click on it at the top. Once there, open up the address tab and type the address of the park and click view. Once you have, once the map pops up and you can see your park, you will use the hand icon to move it around to center it. You can use the plus and minus to zoom in on the project area. Once you are zoomed in on the project area and you can see it up pretty close, you will want to take and use the AOI button to draw your project area. You will click it once and start drawing, and then you're going to double click it to stop it. Once you double clicked it, the screen is automatically going to zoom in on your project area and it will have blue lines through it just like you see here. And as you can see for this one, I did the entire park. If the blue lines are correct, then what I want you to do is you're going to go back up to the top and you're going to click on the soil map tab at the top of the page. A new screen will pull up and it will show you the soil breakdown. At the top right is a button that says printable version. Click on it. A new screen will appear. Click the download button and save the PDF. Here is what the soil map will look like. It will be 3 pages long. You need to print all 3 in color. The first page will show you the map, the second is the legend, and the third is the soil breakdown. Okay? And the nice thing is you don't have to redraw your project area because you drew it already with your AOI button. And that's why you may have to do this more than once. But once you have that map saved, go back to your screen. And now we're going to look, and now we're going to get the farmland map. So at the top of the computer, you should still see the tab open. That is the base of the soil and the farm map. Now you're going to select, instead of soil map, you're going to click on Soil Data Explorer. Once you do that, it should be in the suitability and limitation for use. Go down, click on the land classification tab on the right, and then go down and click open the farmland classification. Once you have the farmland classification open, click view rating. This will once again take you to a new screen, and you can, then you got to come up here after you hit view rating. Go up and do the printable version again. When you hit that printable version, it's going to pop you to that next screen. You're going to download it, you're going to save it, and you're going to print it in color. Your farmland map will look like this. It will be about 5 pages long. You will have 1 page of the map. You will have 4 pages of legend, and you will have 1 with your farmland classifications. If your farmland classifications show that you have prime farmland, there are directions on what you need to do within the application guide. If this is an existing park and it has prime farmland, you won't need to fill out the form. Just state in here that yes, you have prime farmland, but this has been a park for this many years and it's within the city limits. And then you won't have a negative effect on prime farmland. If you do have now more than 1 project area, you would go back to the main screen. You will click back over to the area of interest and clear your AOI and start back over for your second project area. And so if you have 2 project areas, then I'll see 2 soil maps and I will see 2 farmland maps. Now we're going to move to question 77, which is table 2. This is a mandatory impact criteria that preclude the use of a category exclusion. So if you answer yes or a question mark for any of these questions, you will be required to do an environmental assessment or an environmental impact statement, regardless of how you answered anything in question 1. Okay, so if you answer anything but no, we can't give you a category exclusion, and you'll have to do the more intense environmental review. Question 78 asks if there have been any prior environmental reviews completed on the specific project or the site pursuant to the National Environmental Policy Act. If there has, please provide a copy of the title page and a summary of the findings from the NEPA documentation, and include page number references where to find where the findings are located within the document. You can include the entire document if you would like. The purpose of this question is to prevent us from reinventing the wheel and requesting survey work or other research that may have already been done. So an example is we had a project who had an RTP project within the same park, and they had cleared the park. So they could turn in everything that they did for the federal highways as part of this to show that Federal Highways already cleared the park and that just helped us to get a clearance for the LWCF grant. Question 79 asks you to provide explanation for any negative or unknown impacts identified in Table 1 of the Environmental Resource Survey, or any boxes that you marked yes or question mark in Table 2. So if you do click negative or an unknown impact, you need to explain it all here. If you check marked unknown a lot, you may need a separate sheet of paper to write everything here. Question 80 asks how the information identified in the table was derived and what source of data were used to justify the impact. Explain how you arrived at your answers to the questions. So I should see here a list of the maps and the websites that you used. If you got a letter from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, then you should tell me that there is a letter somewhere from them. If you got a letter back from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, you should tell me you have a letter from them. So, and you should list all these maps. So this is going to be more of a list of all wherever you went to collect your information. Question 81 asks you to list who contributed to filling out the Environmental Resource Survey. So you want to provide the name, the title, and the agency for the individuals who helped contribute to filling this out. So this is not the person, so the names don't go from the person from the federal agency. It's whoever contacted the federal agency to do the review. So it's the person who's actually filling out the tables themselves. It's not the people who are at the federal agencies, okay? This is the person from your agency or from the RPC, or if you hired an engineering firm to do it, that actually filled out the form. So National Parks wants to see who filled it out and what qualifications you have in order to do this environmental review. 82 asks you to provide a list of federal, state, and local permits needed for the proposal and explain their purpose and status. So on page 40 through 41 or Adobe page 63 through 64 of the guide are links to some of the most common permits that might be required for your project. So for example, did you need a land disturbance permit because you're disturbing more than that 1 acre as this project, or as a whole you're disturbing one more? Do you need to get a permit from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for 404 or 401? List that all here. Look at those permits and see which ones you're going to need to get. Question 83. Ask if a phase 1 cultural resource survey with shovel testing has been conducted within the project area. If no, you need to describe all the construction plan for this project, including surface area depth. I want you to think like an archaeologist. If there's an area already served, tell us that, how deep you will be digging. Will you be using heavy equipment? Will you be using borrow? And stuff. So when I'm saying construction, so you don't have to give me the specifics, but say, for the restroom, we're putting it on a concrete pad that is going to have to be dug this size, and we're going down this deep because we're going to put this much rock and this much concrete for this to sit on. Our playground, we're doing pour and play, so we're going to go down 6 to 12 inches in order to allow for base rock for concrete and pour and play. And then the posts for the playgrounds are going to go anywhere from 36 to 48. If I've got a restroom coming in, my water lines and utilities are all going to be buried at 36 inches. My trail is going to be 10 foot wide, and I'm doing 6 inches because I do 2 inches base rock and 4 inches of concrete. Okay, so you don't have, just list the items and then just tell us exactly what you're going to be doing for each one of them. Okay, so now we get to that last page, which is your supporting document checklist. The supporting document checklist is provided on applications to aid the project sponsors and should be completed before submitting the application packet. The supporting documents are required documentation to support your application and should be included with your application packet. For a detailed summary of each required item on the checklist, go to the directions in the grant application guide on page 9 through 11 or Adobe page 32 through 34. During this presentation today, the supporting documentations needed to complete this section include the IPAC and Missouri Heritage Report, environmental review maps and the reports that you did, documentation of underserved population, your SHPO letter and Section 106 review packet, any cultural resource surveys that have been done on the property, and the flood map. In order for your application to be complete, you'll need to provide all the information in the checklist, except for the ones that say if applicable, and in which case you have to determine if you need it. So our example is the school community agreement. It's a requirement for schools that are applying, but does not need to be done by a city. Directions also include template language for many of the templates or for many of the items in the checklist. The Missouri State E-Verify is included on page 13 through 16 or Adobe page 36 through 39. You will need to fill this out and return it with your application packet. Remember that incomplete or handwritten applications cannot be scored. The certification of responsible person is the signature section. A responsible official of the sponsor's agency, and this is the individual that is included in the resolution, must sign and date this section to complete the application or the application will not be scored. Examples of responsible officers include mayors, city managers and administrator, park and recreation department directors, and chief financial officers. The responsible officer does not need to be the contact person, but should read the application and understand the requirements for administering the grant should one be awarded. The responsible official cannot be an independent grant writer who is not affiliated with the agency. Remember, an incomplete or inaccurate application packet will not be eligible for scoring. Here is, of course, my contact information. I am Patty Hubbard. That is my phone number. If you have questions, feel free to email mspgrants@dnr.mo.gov. Lindsay Latham is our section chief for the grant management section. If I'm not available, he is available to help answer questions. Final application, 2 hard copies must be postmarked or mailed to us by November 15th, and courtesy reviews can be sent to the mspgrants@dnr.mo.gov by October 11th, and we will review them. Remember, if you submit it on the last day, I do take them in the order which I receive them, so it may take a week or two to get back to you.